Bub. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dog. What was that dog's name? Dozer. Thank you, Dozer, for your inspiration. May all of us be so excited when we see people running past that we want to join in, right? You know, on whatever it is, we want to join in. That we're so excited of whatever they're on their way to. You know, the way to peace, for example. I don't know where you get your news. I used to get my news from the newspaper and the radio and the television news, right? But that's old school. Now I get my news from my Facebook feed, and that it's not like I get from Facebook feed onto other news stories. I get my news from occasional listening to the radio, you know, a little snippet here and there. I get alerts. CNN alerts me on my, I didn't ask for it, but somehow CNN alerts me on my phone, and every now and then it's something I care about. The New York Times sends me emails about things. I like that because I want to know if something's happening, like, you know, earthquake in California, whatever, or something, you know, the stock market's going way up. I like that. I usually go to Bing and then I hit news stories because I think they're fairly neutral. When I go to my AOL, I still have AOL. I just like how AOL works, but they have like 60, on the AOL homepage, there's 60 little stories that are all clickbait. Y'all know what clickbait is. It's like, you know, you hit that and it takes you somewhere further and down the rabbit hole, and sometimes it's funny and sometimes you never get. It's too annoying. You can't hit all the pages to get to what you think you want to get to. So where do we get our news? What about the Bible? Well, sometimes I search for good news on the internet. I don't actually watch any more TV news, but many people like that option. 25 years ago, my mother was an editor at the Seattle Times in Seattle. And at that time, CNN was always on in the newsroom. It was on 24 hours. CNN started in 1980. That was when Ted Turner started that network. So in 1980, that whole thing of 24-hour news started. And now it's like we're inundated, right? You might feel like you have reached saturation. You might want to say, you know, the heck with it. In fact, most of this news might not even be news. It might just be people's opinions about other people's opinions about the news. But I want to tell us all, don't turn away and say, I've had enough. Instead, how about finding a news source that you trust? How about we educate ourselves and we discern between fact and opinion? In my searching the internet, which I admit is really helpful for Sunday talks and writing papers, I found some place that I have often read statistics by the Pew Research Center. The Pew Research Center is a nonpartisan fact tank. Informs the public about issues, attitudes, and trends shaping America. They do public opinion polling, demographic research, content analysis, and they use other data-driven social science research. All right. They do not take policy positions. They are a subsidiary of the Pew Charitable Trust. So they're a little bit neutral, you could say, the Pew Research Center. They're committed to meeting the highest methodological standards, and this is what I like. We are nonprofit, nonpartisan, and non-advocacy. We value independence, objectivity, accuracy, rigor, humility, transparency, and innovation. Here's what I want to talk about them. I want you to, you can look them up, and also I want to me, I trust them. So if you trust me, a little bit, you can trust them right now. You can take my word for it that they're trustworthy. They had a survey, and this was from 2014, about trust levels of news sources by ideological group. It's a little important, I think, right now. So just the idea of it is important. It's not like I want to just get into the details. I want to get into the idea that it varies from what your ideology. Like if you're consistently liberal, you're going to trust, oddly enough, that your highest trust in 2 years ago was the BBC, then NPR, then PBS, the Wall Street Journal. If you're mostly liberal, you trust all those things. If you're mostly conservative, you start not trusting them. And if you're consistently conservative, you don't trust those things. There is one thing that every ideological group trusted, and that was the Wall Street Journal. I found that pretty interesting. So the Wall Street Journal is considered fair. Most groups trusted The Economist, which I have to say I've never read, and the BBC. The consistently conservative were neutral. They thought it was, let's see, what's that? They about equally trusted as distrusted. So the reason I want to bring up this whole gamut is that to say that we are all of us different and we are all of us drawing on a different ideology, and our job, our spiritual job, is to widen ourselves and open our hearts and be trustworthy and to find what's true. You know, we do want to separate the wheat from the chaff. We really, it's our job to find the wheat from the chaff and not to give up, even if it's confusing. And it was interesting, you know, I was on vacation. You may have noticed I was gone last Sunday. I spent a week and a half up at Clear Lake with kids and grandkids, and that was awesome. And yet still, we did have the cabin had some Wi-Fi, so we all knew what was going on. We got in a few political discussions, shared some opinions. And I know I had some feelings come up about what was going on. And I thought it is really important for me to make a response to what's happening in the world, but I don't want to address what's happening in the world. I want to address our response to what's happening in the world, our job and our journey and our soul. Okay? We're what's happening in the world. Okay? And what we see is here for us. It's not here for any other reason than to evolve us spiritually. What's happening in the world is for us to evolve spiritually. And that does not discount anybody's real experience of pain. Now, I handed you out a handout of some scripture. And before I go on about Scripture, let me say that Scripture is, especially the Bible, we consider Scripture an inspiration. It was written by a bunch of people, and it was written so long ago that it's a little bit obscure who wrote what. But Bible scholars agree on one thing, that's written by many people many years ago, and with the intention to record a history in the Old Testament and in the New Testament to inspire and to create, to reflect back what's going on. Now, one of the best writers in Christianity is, of course, Paul. So I picked a few quotes from Paul about teaching peace. I'm not going to read this whole Colossians. I'm going to read the one in the middle. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in the one body, and be thankful. This isn't news. This isn't fact. This isn't inspirational. This is an op-ed, really. This is an opinion of a spiritual teacher. An instruction from a spiritual teacher, as it were. But the words are beautiful. I find the words beautiful, and I find them inspiring. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. The Christ, the enlightened one. Let peace rule in our hearts. And we are called in the one body. We are one. And be thankful. I like that teaching. I like it. I want to show you 2 videos. The tech staff, which is also the same guy who leads us in song, has got 2 videos for us. Just 2 short videos.
We'd long wondered how to respond to these hateful messages, and then we said we'll respond with humour and love.
I just had the idea of drawing a head around it. Here it's a house, for example, and here it's a billiard ball that's running away.
We take textile scraps that are completely irregular shapes and we stitch them back together to create a new flat textile that you can make anything out of. I was sick of making cocktail and evening dresses. I was so stressed out designing all the time, and I just thought, like, this isn't helping anybody. So I decided to close down my studio in the city, and I just had a lazy afternoon of packing up, and I had been collecting all of these textile scraps for years, and I have these 2 giant bags of fabric scraps, and I threw this bag on the ground and it spilled open, and I saw all of this really awesome fabric, and I thought, I have nothing to do today, why don't I make a shirt for myself? So I did, and I put it on Instagram. All of a sudden people started asking me, like, oh, are you doing menswear now? Oh, this is really cool, how much are these? Can I get one? And I was like, oh, this is it. And I started Zero Waste Daniel.
I chose those 2 examples because to me they embodied the scripture that I handed out. I really like, as God's chosen one, holy and beloved, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. I thought that Zero Waste Daniel really showed that. And then, the turning the swastikas into art. I love that whole Zen approach to hate, or any example, anybody's example of taking somebody down or not treating somebody as real. I guess I want to focus on what can we, our community, do. That there's a lot of information out about what works and what doesn't work with people and crowds, and yet we, many times we still all do the wrong thing. One of the things I read about when there were the people protesting the taking down of the Confederate statues, that if there's going to be any kind of neo-Nazi or any expression of that point of view, that the thing to do would be to have a rally for peace in another part of town, across the way, another part of town, not confronting, not getting into the argument, but creating something larger so it shuts it down. There's some examples also on the internet of, in Germany, some neo-Nazis had a run, and so the town decided to treat it as a fundraising for anti-hate. And they passed out bananas and food. They turned that march into a run and said thank you and treated them nicely and gave them snacks and said, this is how much money you've raised by walking this far. This is how much money you've raised by walking that far. You know, that turning around instead of confronting head-on with violence. Even though we feel angry when people say hateful things, of course we feel angry. My dad was in a prison camp for 2 years in World War II, so I have some feelings about that. And, you know, not even personally affected, but many people feel so strongly and feel upset. But I'm telling you, now is the time, people, when we need to be loving and compassionate and kind. And, yeah, I'm not saying don't feel your feelings. God knows I will never say don't feel your feelings. I'm saying feel your feelings and turn them into something creative. Feel your feelings and do something to help somebody. Make something beautiful, you know, take some beautiful pictures. Take some graffiti, you know, make beautiful graffiti out of nasty graffiti. Write poems that express your kindness and your compassion. Post how happy you are on Facebook. Post something nice and kind. Share something that's kind and sweet to you. You know, whether it's a picture of your grandkid, or it is a story of somebody that you just read about or saw, or it is a picture of a flower, whatever it is that creates something good. And as it is our job to create peace, in Unity we've been doing this World Day of Prayer thing for, 10 or 20 years, which actually got started out by some ministerial students because they were thinking of something to do. You know, it may have been an assignment, I don't remember, but they started creating it, and it's taken off. So World Day of Prayer is over all the Unity churches. It's September, is it 13th, 14th, or 14th, 15th? It's Wednesday to the Thursday. Starts the Wednesday night, and then Thursday. So here, we're going to do 24 hours of peace. 24 hours of peace. I think it's important. If you have any availability to come here during those 24 hours, I entreat you to do it. If you just want to come and attend, great. If you have an idea of something you want to present or create or share, there's room for that too. And there's room for you just to come and pray silently upstairs. We're going to have a room that's like just a silent meditation room. We're going to do stuff in the sanctuary. I believe there's going to be snacks at some point. You know, snacks are always good. There'll be time to converse. There'll just be everything around peace. We're going to do some stuff with our peace pole. One of our volunteers cleared out a bunch of weeds from where the peace pole is. And we're going to clean up the landscaping. It's got some great lights on it. How cool would it be if we ended up with an icon in the city that stood for peace, that even attracted a few people? When we first put it up, a neighbor wandered by and said, you know, something had happened. I don't remember which particular thing it was that was upsetting in the news. Something had happened. She said, you know, I saw that peace pole, and I just wanted to leave a note or something there. You know, it's like it became, for her, she thought it could be a place. Well, what if we what if we are such a beacon of light and peace, and we have a place and a sanctuary that the outside peace pole becomes a symbol of something peaceful and beautiful, and that inside each of us we also walk around as a symbol. I'm not saying 100% of the time because I know myself that maybe part of the time, how about if we had a goal that this week that we were peaceful in a time or in the face of something that would generally drive us nuts, whether it is merging onto the freeway or waiting in a long line. You know that funky left turn down here on 31st to Grand? Roland reminded me of how often I make disparaging remarks when I go through, because I don't like it. I don't think it should be there. It's like, well, that's a lot of wasted energy, isn't it? You know, to say, I wish this wasn't here. They should do it differently. Like, come on. I tell you, it's your job and it's very important. Very important. Let's see. I'll make sure. Now, I want to end with just a slight note from Pema Chodron. You may think that when I'm telling you to do these things, I'm telling you to change yourself. I'm not. I'm telling us to actually be who we really are. Okay? You don't need to change yourself. That's the secret. You already are a being of peace and light. You already are the Christ. We got to uncover it, but we already are the Christ. We are the Christ. We are the light. We are the Buddha. We are the true self. No matter how badly we act, in each one of us is a light. No matter how badly we act, no matter how annoying we are, no matter how many people hate us or how dreadful we are, we have a light. So our job is to uncover it, and these things that I'm suggesting, it's in a way they're like sculpting away let's see, that's not the best analogy. It's something like scraping away the rust, or the scraping away, let's just say we've been walking in the mud a little bit, scraping away some mud, washing away some tarnish, taking away the bushel that covers our light, that's what all of it is. So remember, I'm not telling us to change ourselves. I'm telling us to be our true selves. And a little plug, please sign up to do something for the World Day of Prayer. Kathy will talk about that in the announcement time. Or just come during that 24 hours, come and add your light to peace, and let us keep unfolding peace and being peace in the world. And let me just tell you this one last message. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice, aim for restoration, comfort one another, agree with one another, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. Let's take an offering for unity. I invite you to take your tithe and your love offering, or your invisible credit card meme, or whatever it is, in your hand. Let's say this together.